this is like folklore, right? And it went through like all like kind of Filipino American networks like for years. That in 1998, UC Irvine had an 8-hour PCN.
That's not folklore. It's real.
Welcome to This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the nuanced experiences of Filipinos in the United States at iba pa. My name is Ryan Carpio, and I'm joined by my fellow hosts.
Joe Bernardo.
Elaine Delalis. And Mike.
Mike, hi.
Yay!
Producer Mike. Pew, 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 pew.
Oh my gosh.
That was so loud.
Oh, sorry.
God.
Ladies and gentlemen, sorry for the technical difficulties and the extra loud horn from producer Mike's very own sound system over there. But thank you for joining us. Sorry we were a little bit late. Tell all your friends we're on Facebook Live currently. We just had a little technical difficulty, but we are here now, joining you from our respective COVID homes in isolation.
COVID homes.
I don't know, COVID-19 homes.
And
anyway.
I'm gonna, you guys do this intro and stuff. I'm gonna step out and get food because this is the life we live in.
Right on.
Okay, so Elaine had to step out because she went to grab food from somebody who's delivering to her house right now. So
this is real. This is live, folks. This is real stuff.
Yeah. How are you guys doing?
Oh my gosh. Good. Yeah. Feeling good.
I see that you're growing that quarantine beard.
You know, it seems like only this is as far as it got. I mean, in terms of the whole month, but I am trying to look like producer Mike, so I'm trying to grow that quarantine beard. Are you too, Joe?
I think I am. I'm trying to grow a beard, but I'm not as hairy as some folks, so it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
And it probably won't be very full.
Of the X body.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike just shaved this morning, and that's what he has in the afternoon.
This is his 5 o'clock shadow.
And for reals, this is it doubles in size within a month. But yeah.
Really?
This is
wow.
Man.
I mean, I just shaved it 2 weeks ago, and it was pretty short, and here we are.
Oh my gosh. I cannot do that. So I wonder what
Elaine's beard.
I was going to say
Elaine's beard.
Oh, brother. Anyway.
Are folks joining us on Facebook Live?
Yes, folks are joining us. Let's see. I know Cindy's on there. We got Erica Duran Cabrera. Hello, Erica, for joining us. Rianne, our good friend, is on
legal advisor.
Legal advisor. Carlo Del Fuente is watching.
What?
And, this Filipino. Hi, Ruel. I guess we said hi to Ruel earlier.
Carlo. Yeah, Carlo is a TFAL alumni.
Cool.
Yeah.
Rianne says, happy belated birthday, Ryan. Oh, thank you. 25 never felt so good.
25.
15 years
25
ago.
years ago.
Oh, my goodness. We have Joseph Basilio. It says, Ryan Carpio. Hi. Cheryl's on. Oh, Holy Trinity. Cool. Oh, I remember Joe. What's going on, Joe? Hi, Cindy. Anyway, I still waiting for Elaine. What did she get?
Yeah, we should wait for Elaine.
She got an order from our friends at Islos Musubi, and our friend Alfie actually went to go pick it up for us because she did a big order.
Man.
And we ate dinner already, forgetting that we were getting food. So I guess it'll be dinner for tomorrow.
I cooked. We had too much. We bought too much chicken. I ended up cooking both at tinola and adobo tonight. So we have food for the week. I had 4 pounds of chicken. I was like, oh man, I got to cook something. I'm not going to cook just one thing. So
you could freeze it.
No, I know, but I defrosted it and it was like a frozen block. I was like, I might as well cook it. So
yeah.
But yeah. So anyway.
So actually, an idea that we had while we're waiting for Elaine.
Yeah.
An idea that Ryan had was to do a half-baked episode.
Oh, that's right.
COVID edition.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any half-baked ideas, if you're a listener of the podcast, or if maybe Joe, explain what a half-baked episode or a half-baked is, because there might be folks listening to us now that have never listened to our podcast. So
yeah, so half-baked ideas are basically ideas that we may or may not. It may or may not work, but they're basically ideas that should be out there in the world.
right.
You know, it should be either invented, or it should be done, or anything that makes our lives easier, better. That's related to Filipino. So we call that episode Hilaw Pa.
Yeah.
So basically, an idea for a half-baked idea is, what's an example? The Santo Nino
Air freshener.
Air freshener, right? So that's an idea that Ryan had. There should be an air freshener out there that looks like a Santo Nino.
Okay. Put it in your car.
Yeah.
Or Mike's ice cream truck delivering food in the freeway.
Yes. So when you're stuck in traffic,
when traffic was a thing.
Yeah. There should be an ice cream truck delivering food.
And one of our early ones was Joe Bernardo's Puto Bowl. Right?
Yes. That wasn't my idea. It was a friend's idea.
Oh, it was a friend. Sorry. A puto bowl with dinuguan inside. Like a kind of like a clam chowder and a bread bowl.
Yes.
Sourdough bread bowl. Yeah.
So
it hasn't happened, has it?
No, not that I know of. But anyways, that's a half-baked idea. Ryan was suggesting like a future episode, we do half-baked ideas, Hilaw Pa, but the COVID edition.
Ooh.
I think we should. Yeah. So if you have anyone out there who has an idea, half-baked idea, that's related to COVID-19, related to social distancing, please let us know and we can talk about it in a future episode.
So what did I miss as I went out to get?
We're talking about our beards. Yeah,
or your beards.
Yeah.
I went
How's
out
your
to
beard?
go. Oh, it's right here. It's I haven't brushed my hair in 3 days. That's my beard. Yeah,
awesome.
Mike. I went out to get food because good friend of show Alfie Iboho had just picked up food from East Los Musubi, and so she dropped it off for me.
Yeah, what do we get?
For us? So it's Kahlua pork, veggie curry,
for Mike.
katsu chicken, yes, for Mike, and 4 spam musubis that will get us through the week, the rest of the week. And then I just checked the mail, and look, Mike, our Feed the Frontliners Parks Finest shirts came in.
Oh yeah, I forgot the mail downstairs. Sorry.
Yeah, good job, Mike. This is cool.
Can you explain real quick what the Feed the Frontliners project is?
Yeah, so the Parks Finest, they pivoted their restaurant, which serves Filipino barbecue, American cuts of meat with Filipino flavor for barbecue, to feeding frontliners and hospital staff. And so if you purchase a shirt, one of these, this is the back, this is the front. A purchase of a shirt gets 2 meals to somebody at Frontline. So it's cool. And we got the short sleeve shirt because it's getting warm, even though I really wanted the long sleeve, but now it's too hot.
Yeah. And I know a lot of folks out there, a lot of restaurants, a lot of communities are doing something similar, like Feed the Frontliners, basically donating to restaurants who they cook for frontline staff at hospitals or other places. So support your local kind of not charity, but like your local Feed the Frontliners project.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Hi, Ginger. Dima Pasok, I see you of Cafe 86.
She entered?
Yeah. Winner of... Huh? You're so terrible. I snorted.
You snorted?
I snorted. You're the worst.
So let's get this episode started. Who is our TFAL episode, Elaine?
Oh shoot! My email is not.
Okay, our TFAL of the episode is.
It's Chachi Ibarra.
There we go.
Yay!
Hey, Chachi.
Yay, Chachi! Thank
How's
you.
Joni? Sorry.
I bet she doesn't know that reference.
I know.
Oh my god.
She's not going to know that. Shachi is from Hawaii, and she has a new podcast called Reclaiming Philippine X Identity.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
folks can go check that out. And we're always excited to hear new Filipino American Philippine X podcasts coming around. And we're not the only one. So it's kind of
Yes.
cool to have peers that will join us.
And know the pain and struggle of running a podcast.
Yeah. And the struggle of Facebook Live not cooperating.
Yeah. So speaking of reclaiming Filipinx identity, we are going to talk about PCNs.
What?
Yes.
What is a PCN?
PCN, well, there's many kind of variations of PCN, but the PCN I grew up with is called Filipino Cultural Night.
Oh.
But there's different, of course, now there are different, names for that, right? There's a Filipinx Cultural Night, Filipino American Cultural Night, Filipino American Celebration. We talked about this before. How there's there's also, they call it Barrio Fiesta. And there's Fiesta Sabario.
It's just a barrio.
Yeah, so
Those lovely restaurants in Eagle Rock that are next to each other or kind of near each other.
If you don't know, like in Eagle Rock, California, or actually Glendale and Eagle Rock. No, Glendale now. Yeah, they're in Glendale.
Yeah.
So there's a restaurant called Barrio Fiesta, right, which kind of has a chain. But down the street, there's a restaurant. It's called Fiesta Sabario. Just so you know. Yeah.
Genius.
Yeah, so PCN, it's a kind of an institution on many college campuses and increasingly now in high schools. From what you know, what are PCNs? Anybody?
Mike, I tag you first.
Wow, we're gonna start with Mike.
Oh my God.
This is gonna be hilarious.
Having never participated in one, I mean, it's a annual rite of passage for Filipinos to demonstrate their love for their culture.
Why are you laughing?
I mean, yeah, Mike, why are you laughing? What's wrong with you?
I've never participated in one, so I mean, I've gone to like one or two, maybe.
Yeah, not the one I was in.
I went to one of yours, not your last one. I think I went to the one before. Anyways, tangent. I missed her final PCN, and she'll never let me forget it.
Nope.
But you know, I mean, it reminds me of like stuff that we would do in our hometown associations because we'd do like something similar, where we'd have like performances and it'd be like a story and you know traditional dances, or at least the ones that we were aware of, but like taken to like this next level. I feel like so. Popcorn Ryan.
Okay, so what is PCN? On the surface, it's a show, right? It's a showcase. It's a showcase of culture in a night. in this particular one, the Filipino culture.
Are we all going to say the same thing?
No, we don't have to. Let's
and
go
then
to Ryan. Yeah.
On the surface, it is basically a show on stage that people can watch, and then on the part where it's sort of like an identity kind of searching for. It's kind of like the process of putting together a PCN. It's pretty interesting, and I know we'll get into it, but Mike is absolutely right in terms of like the rite of passage. But I don't want people to think that it's the only rite of passage, being a Filipino American in a college. But it is probably or not even in high school. But it is probably an interesting, to say the least, an interesting way to get a snapshot or an understanding of the Filipino culture for a short amount of time. That's how I'll start it, and then we'll get deeper into it. But
Got it.
and I have participated in 2 of mine. I watched a few when I was younger, and I participated in 2 in my school.
I think of the 4 of us, I participated in the most.
Oh, because you did 5, right?
Because I did 5. Because I was in college for 5 years.
Yeah.
When
My
did you?
parents only went to 4. So
When did you first hear about PCN?
I was in probably high school or junior high because my cousin Brian went to UC Riverside and he was in skit a bunch of times for their PCNs.
Got it. How old
And
were you?
he brought the tapes and we watched it at a family party.
The VHS tapes.
Yes.
So, how old were you when you first learned about
I was
it?
probably like, Brian's like a few, I was probably like in high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I first learned about it in, I believe, 6th grade. So my brother went to UC Irvine and participated in Filipino Cultural Night, PCN. And basically, like, it was a whole family gathering where we all drove down to Irvine and we watched it.
Really?
Yeah. It was a big family thing.
Wait. Sorry. Was any of your family in it?
No, it was just, it's my brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my brother. So I was there when UC Irvine first introduced the whole commercials, like video commercials.
Oh.
So that was the first year I went. So yeah.
So did you see the Terminator one?
Yes, I saw that live.
That's the best. That's a classic UC Irvine Kababayan commercial.
That's actually on YouTube.
Yes, it's on YouTube where they mock Terminator 2 or they parody Terminator 2, and I will never forget it because they do the scene where this not Arnold Schwarzenegger but the other Terminator runs, and then the foil is the metal that explodes, and it's just like a piece of Reynolds wrap. It was really hilarious.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
you have to look at it. They call it TT.
Oh, really?
Terminator twice. Anyways, so when I went there, it was weird because it was such like I never knew like so many things, right? Like I didn't really know like a lot of the dances. Like I never knew what a PCN was, and it's first time watching it, so I was like, whoa, this is actually kind of interesting and kind of cool. So anyways, but by the time I went to college, I was all gung-ho about, doing a PCN.
So when I was I think I saw one when I was in high school. Yeah, because I have older brothers, and I don't remember a lot of it. And then I knew what it was, and I knew it's sort of like what it's supposed to be. So I kind of knew of it, and yeah, not until college did I realize, okay, this is kind of interesting and fun. I remember being a freshman and watching PCN at Berkeley and being really, really impressed by how it was done. I was like, okay, this is really cool. And then 2 years later, I decided I'm going to audition and join. And then the year after that,
Were you in skit, Ryan?
Oh my gosh, I was in skit. I was in dance. It was great. I loved it. So.
But did you ever take like a leadership role in it? Like
no.
Coordinator for anything? No? Okay.
No, I didn't coordinate anything.
Joe, did you?
I just acted.
Why you smile when you say that? Dude?
I mean, Joe, did you?
Yes, I was a PCN coordinator 1 year.
How many years? 1 year, did you say?
Just one. Dude, you can only do one. It's like your grades totally slip.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because like your life for that year is consumed by this one little show, right? But yeah, it was just I was a coordinator, and I only did PCN like really. I did 4 years, but like my senior year, like I just did one dance. I didn't really care after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did senior suite my senior year.
We didn't really have a senior suite, but
so let's kind of explain to folks. I think most people kind of know, right?
No,
but like, what's the process coordinator? Like how
think most people do know what a PCN is. I feel like it's a very California type thing. Like
no, I think increasingly. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, like, because Mike said that these are things that he did in his high school, like the dances. And I'll be honest, I kind of thought the same because in my high school they did these dances too, and like Therese Guy, who was the nurse practitioner we talked to, her family was a part of Siniginto, which was a Filipino dance troupe
Siniginto, yeah.
in that was based out of St. Genevieve, and the people in that dance troupe went on to teach cultural dance to colleges in California. So if you were like in a culture night in the late 90s, early 2000s, one of them probably came out to your school to teach you how to do something properly.
Mm-hmm.
But like East Coast folks, I don't think they know what that is.
No, I think it definitely started in California. I believe San Francisco State was the first one to have a PCN. And I think it's their 47th or something this year.
Wow.
Or supposed to be 47th. And then, sometime it became popular during the 80s and 90s when more and more Filipino Americans started entering college and higher education, especially in California. And then, probably like in the 90s, it really started, like people in the East Coast started doing it. And people in like the Midwest and the South and other schools that have, a significant number of Filipino Americans students, they started to do it. And more or less, it's a national phenomenon now.
Marlo Campos in the Facebook group is saying that they have something called the Battle of the Bamboo.
Yes. So I heard it's kind of like it's like a tinikling battle.
Oh, okay.
But it's I'm not sure if it's only tinikling or they also do other stuff with bamboo sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they don't have like a skit attached that goes over some storyline that like talks about Phil Am trying to find themselves and possibly battle with somebody who is a new Filipino immigrant, and they challenge each other on who is the most Filipino, while also talking about Filipino American World War II veterans and the farm workers.
And that's a PCN, everyone. Yay. Well, you kind of encapsulated a lot of. Well, you didn't really encapsulate because there's so much stuff, right?
There's more.
Kind of
I mean, I left
you
out
gave us the some of the nuggets of what a PCN is. So, maybe we should ask the coordinator, Joe Bernardo.
The coordinator.
So largely a PCN is a show that has a storyline or skit that kind of overarches the entire show, and then you kind of intersplice that with like dances, and there's some schools have commercial breaks that that Irvine does. Some schools do spoken word, right? But then the overarching the whole kind of show, right, is a skit that usually is pertaining to an issue or a storyline that's really related to Filipino and Filipino American experiences.
Yes.
So basically, if you watch the debut, imagine the debut in a stage play form.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yes. That's actually pretty accurate. And people in the debut, several folks in there were in Cabo Modern.
Yeah.
Because they were part of the dance scene. And my gripe about that movie is that if that was a real party, they would have ate the food.
Yeah. And then usually you start planning in the summer, right? And then you start practicing in the fall, and it all culminates into this one long show in the spring. Yeah. Right. So that's why all PCNs happen like in March, April, and May.
So, depending if you're a semester school or quarter system school, and the Filipino schools would coordinate the weekend so that for school spirit and camaraderie and kababayan and Kapwa, you would go visit the other schools to watch their shows.
Yes.
And steal their stuff?
Not steal their stuff.
Not enough time to steal. Right?
Is it like Bring It On or something?
Yeah. No.
It's already been brought in.
It's not friendship games.
But I do know that there's kind of like an unspoken competition. About who did the best in Kill, who did the best.
I know. And it's always
and they try to top it.
UC Irvine.
Oh God, who cares?
I mean, in UC Irvine, there was a limitation. You could only be in at least like one or two areas at the most.
Because you have so many Filipinos in Irvine.
But I'm just saying, you couldn't dominate. It was so everyone could participate.
Yeah.
Speaking as somebody who was in choir, and at the time it was called IGS, and also it was called rural. IGS is like Cordillera or mountain people. And then there's trads, which is traditionalists.
What's the difference between IGS and trads?
Trads is like more, I feel like it was like Lumad, like southern.
Oh, southern Highland
yeah.
Filipinos. Got it.
And then Muslim, which I think they don't name that anymore. They call it Moro.
Mm-hmm.
Rural is like all the happy tinikling stuff, which also encompasses Maria Clara.
Got it.
Wow.
And then modern.
So those are like the
and then
sweets.
Modern.
They call it the sweet hand.
The sweets. And then there is skit.
The stummies.
And choir.
Sweet. Too many sweets gets you diabetes.
Marlo Campos says traditional doesn't make sense. It's too broad. I thought that was interesting.
It made sense to us because we understood what it was.
So let's talk really quickly about like the sweets, right? And so we were sort of talking about how we were trying to encapsulate into maybe a 2-hour show, or in Irvine's case, maybe a 17-hour show. I don't know. However long some others were.
A mini series.
Okay, so just a little history about that. I remember this is like folklore, right? And it went through like all like kind of Filipino American networks like for years. That in 1998, UC Irvine had an 8-hour PCN.
That's not folklore. It's real. It's real because I was a freshman in, I'm dating myself, 98, 99. And that year, they were determined to keep it under 3 hours. Because the previous year, the show was 8 hours.
That's a 2-hour pre-show, right? And then an 8-hour.
I don't even know. I just know that
I think that's how it was.
People, like, there was original songs, like people that were written, and then people forgot lyrics because the show was so long.
People got paid time and a half. Just kidding. No one gets paid on this. Okay, but so going back to kind of like the things that we were trying to capture, right? All those sweets. So there's acting involved, there's singing, of course, and there's dancing, and there's I don't know if we called ours sweets. We just had like different sections to it, but kind of like a Philippine variety show, but showcasing our culture is basically the show, right? And it ranges from a 2-hour show to an 8-hour show, whatever you decide to do. But it's student run, and all the actors and all the production stuff are most of the time Filipino Americans, students of the school.
Yes.
And once in a while you'll have one person who plays the white guy, which is my friend Sean.
It's my friend Gabe.
It was my friend Mike.
The oppressive
not this
white
Mike,
guy.
the other Mike Knox.
I think Sean played a soldier. Sean is also a TFAL of the episode, as one of my best friends. But it
always played the enemy somehow.
No, our white guy played a love interest.
Oh,
yeah.
Was he a military love interest in a
no,
or something?
It was like a boxing themed one, and I think it was set in the 1940s.
Yeah. So you have the token.
I saw that one.
Right.
The token white guy, right, who played all like the villainous characters.
But give some examples of what you guys have seen, like or thematic examples outside of like the general kind of like dances, for example. Most will have traditional dances, right? Like the ones that you guys have mentioned. But give me some themes of what a Filipino Cultural Night is supposed to talk about. You sort of touched upon it, Elaine, but like
I don't think
farm
there's
workers
anything it's supposed to talk about.
Okay.
It's just about like it's whoever wrote the script that year decides to choose for the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it changes every year, right? So like one year could be about finding your culture. The other year could be about mail order brides, right? Yes. And another year can be about, like what Elaine said, Filipino veterans.
Right.
Or
and
it could be about Scooby. like a
Scooby.
Scooby-Doo adventure, because that is a PCN that I was in,
Oh.
where Earl Bylon, former guest, played Scooby.
He
What?
played the dog.
He played the duck.
Awesome.
I don't know if I ever saw that one.
That was our freshman year.
Oh, I definitely didn't go to that one.
So real quick, Ben de Guzman on the chat says, I've always believed PCNs being so long is evidence that performance isn't really about the audience, but rather centers the journey of self-discovery for the performers.
I mean,
Yeah.
So I think that's a good
I mean,
segue.
that's part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good segue into why Mike called this sort of like a rite of passage. But it does become kind of like, if you're a Filipino American on a campus in California, right?
Or elsewhere.
This is
too. Yeah.
What was that?
Or elsewhere.
Or elsewhere,
Now.
right?
Now.
Yeah. But that's where you go to, like, I don't know,
Meet girls.
make friends, meet girls. No, I mean, it's true. That's where do
College,
you go?
It's
college.
it's not friendship
it's one of-
games.
It's one of the places you go.
One of the places, because now a lot of college campuses have like a Filipino group for whatever kind of interest, right? Whether it's like a political interest or like something that's professional, right?
Right.
The like I went to Santa Barbara. There weren't too many Filipinos, and there was like one Filipino club, and then there was kind of one that was more politically bent.
Mhm.
But it always had like maybe just 4 or 5 people in it, right? But then like a place like Berkeley or Irvine or UCLA, they have like tons of different kinds of groups. Like it's also like SF State and a lot of the Cal States. They have a group for science students,
Right.
A group for medical students, a group for people who want to be more activist leaning. Right. So there's more choices. But I think what you're saying, PCN, is the thing that kind of galvanates, I'd say galvanates most everyone under umbrella as much as it can.
And I think it's because like there is programming, like the calendar year of a student org. PCN is like the culmination of it. Right before, it's like the big thing right before P-grad, before graduation.
It's the party.
And it's a celebration, and like
it's the debut party.
I just remember like thinking my last year, I'll admit, and like the reason why we're doing this is because folks this year didn't get to do PCN.
Yeah.
Right? Like and like they are robbed of so many things. If you're in college, you're robbed of a lot of things. But I can remember what that feeling was being on stage one last time. And like, no joke, I was probably crying with all my friends because we were seniors, and this is the last time we'll be on the Bren Event Center stage.
But you're Elaine, you cry all the time.
Also, I cry all the time. So I would cry next time. But I mean, it was like such a thing for like, it was such like a happy occasion to have. Like, college is rough for some folks, and like to have that moment to shine is like, it's like, you go out on top, you think. That's what I'm trying to say.
So I wanted to ask a few questions. Mike, why didn't you do it?
I mean, I wasn't part of the Filipino, I wasn't part of CABA or any other Filipino groups at all, really, my entire 5 years there. I'd put maybe until like towards the end, and I was, supporting some of the Tagalog studies, like movement stuff, but I just wasn't interested. I don't know. And so, I mean, like, I don't know, actually. I think it was just a general disinterest in like the Filipino American kind of culture on campus at UC Irvine at the time, other than meeting Elaine, obviously, and then like
falling in love or
whatever.
you kind of said it earlier, Mike. Was it because you were pretty much like exposed throughout your younger years and being part of like the organization?
I guess. I mean, I didn't really have a lack of like Filipino culture or community growing up. In high school, like in high school and in Ventura County, I mean, like we had Filipino organizations out there too, and and I don't know. I mean, I think like when I got to college, I was more interested in kind of just getting a more broader kind of set of experiences. And something about the pageantry of like PCNs reminded me of like some of the more just like, I don't know. I wasn't that interested in the pageantry and like the Filipino organizations,
Yeah.
Like, especially like the hometown associations and like, you know,
Dinner
the
dances and all that stuff.
dinner dances. And it's just like, oh, God, more of this. But like for like 4 hours, you know? But I mean,
Hey,
you know,
it's
that
not
was just
8,
me.
It's not 8 hours.
And it was like, it wasn't like a knock against the folks who were like doing it. And like, you know, Elaine was obviously the exact polar opposite of me and did all the Filipino things. And so I just experienced it through her, you know, so.
Got it.
Yes.
Ryan, how come you only did it a couple times?
Well, that's personal for me in the sense that I wasn't really very social in my first couple of years of school. Because I'm shy, you know, and
Right.
No, but I think my first couple of years in school, I basically hung out with friends that I already had, like my high school friends, some of my best friends, and it took me a while to kind of break out of my shell, and so that's part of what it was, and I think when we were talking about this journey and self-discovery, it was definitely part of it. Like when I was a junior, I decided I'm going to be more active, whatever the heck that meant, right? Because there's a lot of those words come out in college. You're like, are you active? Are you, I haven't seen you in a while, you're MIA and all that. Like there's some kind of like social capital in being seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also the idea of like just not being, not having my college experience be limited to the books, and not having a college experience that's sort of limiting. And so to me, actually exploring the idea of being on stage
Mm-hmm.
was what I wanted to do. And I've told you guys this before. If I wasn't doing what I was doing now, I'd probably try to be an actor, right? So that part of it was drew me. And of course, like the social aspect of it drew me. I'm a total extrovert, and going to practices and seeing folks in kind of like a setting where you're creating something, or you're building some kind of some not just friendships, but like a show. I thought that was really, really cool. And I was really excited about the actual journey of it. Of course, if you're there to meet guys or girls, however you got to PCN, you got there, right? If you're there to be creative and be a writer for one of the shows, the skits, then great. If you're there to showcase a talent, then great, right? If you're there just to hang out, right? It's great.
I mean, I think that's what kind of a lot of that drew a lot of people, is the performance part. Is that I think Filipinos are so I guess not ostracized, but like a lot of avenues are kind of cut off from them, from like creativity through mainstream ways, right? And PCN actually allows people to kind of create, to perform, to be kind of an artist per se, right? On a stage with an audience.
It's where all the bio majors who wish they could go into drama get to act out. Like, or all the I mean, Joe Coy talks about it in his special, right? About all the nurses who are like former dancers. Like literally college and a PCN is your opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Show your artistic side. Like there are so many engineering people that I knew who did PCN in various like dance suites and whatnot. And like, yes, they had like that type of brain, like the computer science engineering type brain. But they also wanted to be like actors or singers or dancers. And PCN afforded them that because their parents didn't approve of them studying it formally.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a way for people to be creative.
Yeah.
But let me ask you some of these kind of the controversies, the criticisms about PCN, right?
Sure.
So a lot of scholars and journalists, community leaders, they have, I guess, critique PCN, right? There's a lot of criticism about PCN, how it's, one critique, it's the same story over and over again. It's the same formula over and over again, right? Another critique is that PCN is apolitical, right? It takes student energy away from activism.
Actual activism. Or
actual activism, like fighting for ethnic studies, right? It takes money away from something that could go into like ethnic studies, like I said.
Mhm.
And also PCN, I've seen critiques where PCN is called how Filipino Americans can perform cultural appropriation, right? So like Highland groups like Igorot, Bukidnon, right? A lot of them are not Igorot or from those groups. Same with like kind of the Muslim groups, right? And there's a lot of controversy about like modern hip hop, right? Do we pay enough homage to African American forebearers who have kind of created this genre,
Right.
right? So what do you think of kind of those critiques? Well, maybe we'll start like one by one. How about the critique about it's the same story over and over again, or the same formula?
I
Well,
mean,
I
go
don't
ahead.
know what the stories are like now. So I would hope that
It's evolved.
a college student could tell us what that would be, like what the story would be. And
So,
that's to my own part. Like I mean, we've been invited to go to PCNs, and I'll be honest, I bowed out because I did my time. I did my bid.
And you know it's going to be the same story.
It's gonna be the same story.
I'm sorry, colleges that have invited us, but like, I was in a 6-hour PCN. I know what that's like. So,
but I think that's part of it, right? Like, I think there's value in going through that because
yeah,
it's not us anymore, right? I think what my hope is that it has evolved somehow. That we
I would
are
hope.
right, and there was a comment earlier in the chat. I can't scroll up there now, but even the way we change the names of the suites, for example.
Yeah.
There's an evolution to it, which is good. Which means we're learning, right? The creativity is good too. Like shortening it. That's a lesson in itself, right? Shortening
and
a show.
Somebody asked
using
why,
film.
Somebody asked why they were so long, and it was because we named all those suites, right? Like all those different dance suites.
Yeah.
And it was like a timing issue. And so I remember at Irvine, like each dance suite was given 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there are 6 dance suites at 10 minutes, that's already an hour.
Yeah.
And then you have to figure out all the transitions of the story, that whatever the story is, plus like the chorus,
Right.
like that choir that is not just there to sing the national anthems at the front end and then the whatever random song they put in the middle. Like there is something there. So like, ideally, if you were tight and right, maybe you can get a show to be 90 minutes.
Right.
I would challenge somebody to do that.
Yeah.
Challenge.
But I think so just real quick, based on the chat, Ben was weighing in and Jessica is saying it wasn't the same stories for PCN and USC in the late 90s. I think Ben earlier said, a lot of the storylines on the 90s Cal PCNs were about gang violence. And so that's what I think is not the same, right? Like it's a sign of the times of what we were experiencing.
Yeah.
So the storyline could change, and I think that's pretty cool.
And it is reflective of the students that are there.
Yes,
it's reflective of the student population. Because I can recall when Jonathan Wandag was at UCLA at the time, Samahang Filipinos PCNs were to my generation legendary because Jonathan Wandag was an ethnomusicology major and he was in this Filipino punk band called Idvid that we were all fans of in the mid 2000s. And he would write like all these amazing songs. And so we, in the PCN culture of that era, we were all like, why can't we do that? And it's like, we can't do that because we're not that guy. We're not Jonathan Wandag who knows how to like write music and is like, as a witty lyricist,
Right.
like there's a talent component there.
Right.
And so I don't know where I'm going with it. I'm just saying that like generations, like each.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, so it's not the same story, right? But none of us would ever go to a PCN ever again, unless you have to. Right?
Can I ask why does a PCN have to have original songs or a skit even? Like why are those
that's the
elements
thing,
of
right?
a PCN?
So in 1999, right? Cal Berkeley tried to completely kind of change the format, right, Ryan?
Yeah,
right?
I think it was 2000.
Oh, 2000.
2000.
I thought it was 99. Anyways.
My first one was 99. My second one was when Ronnie was the director. And
Yeah.
that was the controversial one. That was
It
like
was
an hour-
controversial because it didn't fit the same formula.
Right. It was funny because part of the controversy was it was short, and we did 2 shows that year, or they did 2 shows that year.
But
Because it was so short.
Yes.
You could do 2 shows.
we did a matinee and a evening.
So
That's
from what I
amazing.
heard, it was a PCN where, like they didn't have any cultural dances.
Mm-mm.
Like some of the music was they used Stomp. Remember
Mhm.
that kind of show Stomp,
Oh yeah.
right? So they used from what I know, it was a farm workers
Yep.
skit, right?
It was great. Yeah.
And then they used the rakes and the hose and the kind of the tools to pick up asparagus or something, and they
Right.
basically made it into a musical using those instruments as
Ooh.
Yeah.
as
I remember it very clearly. It was
Those tools
a
as
very
instruments.
good, very good skit. Yeah.
But I believe the next year they kind of just went back to the same old formula, right? That most
It kind of
PCNs are now.
mixed. Yeah.
But
it
can I
kind of
ask about that
mixed.
though? How
Yeah,
did that
yeah.
become the formula in the first place? Like that's what I'm wondering. Like if you go to a stage show, I mean, like I guess if you go to a musical, there's like a story that propels the music or whatever, right? But like, what? How did the modern PCN end up with that format in the first place? Like, was it like
So
modeled after
from
something else?
I forgot how it evolved into that formula, but from what I know, I read Theo Gonzalez's
He's in the chat, by the way.
He is? Oh
Yeah.
shit.
I think that's what someone said.
Yeah. Ben said Theo's in the house.
Oh shit. Oh hi.
That's the state also
Hi,
messed
Theo.
with the PCN format back in 1992. According to Theo.
So from what I know, it was institutionalized, I guess, in the early 80s, and UCLA happened to be like kind of not a standard, but like I guess one of the standards that people kind of copied from.
Mhm.
From what I know, and Theo, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But then that kind of just stuck, and it's also a way to gather, because the production, it's like 200, 300 people like on a stage.
Mhm.
What other way to kind of gather these people and kind of have everybody
Mhm.
in this one show, right? And I guess that formula worked, and it's
I guess I was trying to draw a
It
connection to
happened.
like, is there some connection to like, variety shows in the Philippines? Is there a connection to like,
No.
I mean, because like,
If it was a variety show in the Philippines, there would be no story about World War II veterans or
well, no,
farm
I mean, I guess,
workers.
I'm thinking
but-
like, it's like a merger of all these different ideas of what a show could be, but like, no, without the concise editing that like a actual professional show usually has.
I mean, you said it right. Actual professional show.
Yeah.
It's
It's
student
not.
run.
It's
It's
student run,
not.
right?
Yeah.
It's like it's a bunch of 18 to 23-year-olds,
Mhm.
maybe older, 25, trying to figure it out. And like every year it's going to be new because people graduate, institutional knowledge goes away. And so when you're trying to figure out the layout and run of a show, you go back to what's tried and true and test it.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Theo Gonzalez, he pointed out that they try to mess with the format too, like in the early 90s at SF State, and it kind of just went back.
Yeah. No. So some of the highlights of like, I think what people are searching for, the audience is searching for in a show, right? Like there's probably a reason why Elaine's like, oh, I'm not going to watch. I did my time, and that's fair because there's sort of a formula to it in the sense that it harkens back to the culture part. I think is what we long want to
Or
express.
maybe
The Filipino.
fiesta culture too, like
Right.
fiesta.
Yeah.
Like when you have fiesta, you have performances, and a lot of them are dances and
Right.
stuff like that, right?
I mean,
So
I'm
that's
going
why
to
it's
be honest
kind
with
of
you.
formulaic.
I am the worst. I am the worst
We know
audience
that.
member. Like, my cousin was in a dance group and I never went to any of his performances. Yes, one of these. He was on a freaking TV show competing and I never watched a single episode.
Yeah.
I did vote though, because my tita sent the text message, vote for them, make sure they can go along. But like, so I'm the worst. So I'm not a good example. But I'm sure there are people like if they're in college for the first time, like first gen US college experience, and you do a PCN, you want to share that
Right.
with your family.
And-
Even if they don't know what's going on, you want them to be a part of that journey.
Well, that leads to my other question though, is like, so we're talking about it from the perspective of us as college students that went to college in America, experienced these PCNs in different ways. What do the parents actually think of this stuff, right? Because my parents would always be like, we don't want to see that stuff. Like, we didn't even do that in the Philippines. Like, I don't know those dances. Right. I don't know that province. I don't like. It would be so alien to them. You know what I mean?
I think what the heart for me, I think what the heart of a PCN is, it's like a family talent show.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like your school, like when you're elementary school, you put on a school play, right? And your family goes there and watches you perform. Like the content isn't necessarily like the most important thing. It's actually seeing your family member, your friend on stage
perform, right?
And I think that's the gravitas of a PCN.
Right.
At least
it's like a family party talent show on steroids.
Right. And that's why earlier I said it's sort of like on the surface it's a show.
Yeah.
But on a deeper level, it's like it's a show that's trying to, like, using Joe's words, it's trying to galvanize a group of students to do something creative. And unfortunately, there's some formulas to it. But the cool thing that I actually welcome and that I like is criticism. And that's when people start talking about it. Messing with format is amazing to me. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to kind of like challenge it a little bit, right? So this search for identity, like not including traditional dances and talking about like more relevant Filipino American things, actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about media, talking about domestic violence, or gang violence, or the farm workers, all that stuff. I think is really, really cool. I love that when parents come out and say, I don't understand any of it, but I'm glad that, like that's fine.
Yeah.
What you hope for is that they learn something new. But to be honest with you guys, I haven't seen a PCN since I graduated.
Screw you, Ryan.
All that to say,
I mean, I've seen one or two. Yeah.
I've seen a PCN recently because I work at a university, and yeah, I never want to watch another one unless my family members in it or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah. Okay. So the other kind of critique, or one of the other critiques, is that PCN is apolitical, and it takes apolitical. Okay. Right. It takes student energy away from activism like fighting for ethnic studies or something, quote unquote, more pertinent.
But doesn't that buy into what certain definition of what politics is?
Sure. Yeah.
I think, in college, I think that's all you have, though. And so, like, I remember, like, the critiques that I got from people who weren't involved but were Filipino were like, we should be doing all this other stuff, all the money that we spend on this thing. Yeah. The one time we get all these people's attention is quote unquote wasted on like, cultural performances that aren't even accurate or like relevant. But yeah, in retrospect, when you think about it, like certain cultural practices, performance is a political act in of itself, right? Like the idea that we're identifying how we identify ourselves and demonstrating what we feel like is a depiction of our culture is something that, you take for granted because you think of it as just the performance. But to everyone else's point, I mean, there's like even the topics of the skits and everything else. I mean, we're sharing something in a way that like it doesn't exist usually otherwise in like your general media.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Mike was saying in terms of activism in itself. I'm going to use the word learning, right? There's a lot of folks who probably would not have learned about Filipino American history if not for a PCN. I can tell you right now,
or at least tidbits of it, right?
Or the tidbits of it, like, or not get introduced to it, or or given them as in a snapshot of this is what this is. Look, I came in as a science major. I didn't have to take any English courses. I didn't have to take I decided to take like an Asian Am Lit course out of interest, ethnic studies out of interest. But to some of my friends who are in the sciences, they were scientists all the way. And what Elaine was talking about earlier was like, how else do you get introduced into this idea? You're not just a one trick pony. You're not just there to study. You're there to kind of like experience these things. So yeah, it's not quite activism, but I mean, it can kind of light a fire in folks. It's not for everyone, right? It's not for everyone. Everyone has their own reason for doing it, like what we've been saying earlier. But I don't want to devalue a person's experience through it, because I think it can be a valuable tool. Now, the critique of it being, taking away from actual activism, then let's figure out how to change that. And part of the what I side with that argument is because it takes so long. Like what you said, Joe, the planning of this is like a year-long process, right? And so
it takes tons of energy,
right? And so I do have to say, if there was another thing that we were active on as a Filipino American group on a campus that took that long to organize and that people would still be interested in, I think would be great. I just don't know what that is. But the pageantry and the show, I think it's always just kind of interesting. But I'm curious to know what other campuses are doing, right? Like in terms of fulfilling that activism role, maybe in collaboration with like a PCN production. But for us, a lot of our skits were very political. They were very much like calling to attention what media plays into what culture is. What Filipino American culture looks like now. Like, why did we stop doing the tinikling? Because that's not what our story is here. That's what drew me into deciding to perform. Actually.
Oh, you mean the year that you didn't?
Yeah, the year that I didn't was Ronnie's year. I was an audience member, and Ronnie De Leon, when he did that, it really like I just went, whoa, this is amazing. There's like 4 different skits or maybe 5, and it dealt with a bunch of very kind of current for me, right? But it wasn't harkening back a lot to like the Fiesta Suites. It wasn't that at all. It was talking more about like the farm workers. It was talking about activism, just on stage. So
yeah, I mean, the PCN I coordinate, I tried to like intersplice, like something educational every time, right? As much as I could, as much as like the group wanted. But at kind of at the end of the day, it's kind of like hopefully someone took a nugget from it, and they can apply to it later. And it's a lot of it's the first time parents are like hearing about it, right? Hearing about certain issues, because a lot of Filipino American immigrant parents don't take ethnic study classes, right? So I think that's a way for them to kind of to learn about kind of the issues in our community. Ben de Guzman said, for some people, it is the closest thing they'll come to political action. That said, maybe PCN should do something political, like do voter registration drives, have petitions there, donate to a nonprofit. So I think that's great.
I agree with that. But I also want to point out that like the act of like 75 to 200 Filipinos on a stage is a political act. I personally believe that. Sure. Because where else do you get to see that ever happen?
Church.
But you know what I mean? Like we talk about representation. About representation. Right. And like for me as a college student, or for anybody out there who ever participated in a PCN, to be on that stage, like that's a political act. And I think it does a disservice to say you should be more political. The stories is blah. It's like you're not really covering anything because you're trying to be entertaining. The fact that you get to be entertaining in a stage in front of an audience is a political act. That being said, yeah, the stories could always be a little more serious. They could be a little more educational and all that stuff. But like, it's a show. At the end of the day, it's theater. And so folks want to have a good time. If you want to write a drama and entertain folks that way, by all means do it. But a lot of the times PCNs are dramedies, there's some, it's like a teleseries come to life.
Okay. Well, let me play a bit devil's advocate. Cause, so there's a scholar out there. I won't name the name and I won't name the book, but, that person's, opening chapter, basically was describing a scene where it would happen in Berkeley, where there was a demonstration, and they took people. Student activists took over the administration building because they want to fight for ethnic studies, right? They wanted to fight. It was kind of like a rebirth of the Third World Liberation Front, right? But then juxtapose that, right outside the administration building was a PCN practice, right?
Okay.
And then when folks were trying to encourage those folks to join the protest, they said, no, we have PCN practice. Right. So, it's not necessarily I believe it, but I'm playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
No. So, Joe, I
Yeah.
lived that life. I actually did experience the situation where we did have PCN practice, and somebody tried to make a statement that encourage everybody at PCN practice to participate in some type of political action.
Okay.
The folks at the practice, some of them were like, "I'm here for PCN practice.
Right.
I don't want to do this political action," and it is their prerogative to do so. It's anyone's prerogative to do that.
Yeah.
So, like, that being said, you can't force people to do whatever they want. Like, you got to meet them halfway or meet them to wherever they are in their own personal development politically.
Agree.
And so, like, to say that the action takes more precedence over the practice, like the PCN cultural dance practice, that I personally think that's comparing apples to oranges, because it's not fair. Because, like, as a person, like, Joe, wherever you're at in your political, like, personal life, I may not be there.
Yeah.
And we got to respect that. And so to judge other folks to say, like, you guys aren't down enough for that because you're not going to participate, that's not fair to folks. Because, like, they may not get to that point ever, but you don't get to judge them for their choice on that matter.
I would say the interesting privilege of going to UC Irvine when we did was that, like, there was so many Filipinos that it all spanned kind of the political spectrum. And so you have to imagine that, like, in a PCN that is employing the majority of Filipinos off the campus, that there are probably a bunch there who don't care about those political issues at all, or maybe think the exact opposite. And so to assume that Filipinos in any space are a monolith is like a disservice to kind of like Filipinos in general. But yeah, I mean, I think, like, it shouldn't have to be. It's a false choice, and it is apples to oranges. But yeah, I think, like, it was just kind of like college is kind of that space in which we're all trying to kind of, like, to educate ourselves and educate each other. But the thing that you only learn, I think, like, post college or maybe, like, with just experience and age is, like, the fact that, like, the diversity of thought and, like, opinions and, like, cultural practice and everything else is actually a good thing and not, like, a negative,
Got it.
Because I think there's so much urgency, I think, in college to, like, kind of like, this is a thing we need to, like, be passionate about. Let's all be passionate about it. If I tried to do that today, like, amongst my group of friends, for example, they'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Right.
Like, but, like, in college, it just seems like this microcosm of this idea that, like, we can all unite behind these one things, which in many cases, like the veterans and other things, like, sure, but I mean, as we experience, like, in our daily lives and even amongst our family, like, I mean, that's why we have this podcast, right? Is because we recognize that Filipino American identity is not a monolithic thing. And so to be political, to your original point, Elaine, is like the cultural practice of, like, PCNs is a political act in of itself, even if it's not an overt one, like, taking over an administration building. So
there's only one way, you know that, right?
Jesus. So Marios.
All right. So my other kind of another critique is that PCN can lead to cultural appropriation, like Highland groups, or basically of Filipino Americans dancing dances from Igorot or Bukidnon, like some of the Highland groups, or what you call, Elaine, Igs or Trads, right?
Or Igs. Trads is like Lumad. It's supposed to be like Southern.
Yeah. Well, like both, right?
Yeah.
Basically, most Filipino Americans are lowland, Filipinos, right?
Or they may not even know.
Or they might not even know. Yeah. And also kind of the dances where that come from, like, Bangsamoro, like the Muslim areas in the Philippines. So what do you think of all that?
I don't know. I think if you go to college long enough and do enough PCNs and get to participate in all the dances, you get a well-rounded idea of what cultural dance is. Speaking from personal experience.
But I mean, I think like, are you talking about like accuracy or like authenticity or just like,
I mean, okay. So another part from Theo Gonzalez is either book or an article that I read is that that kind of the origin of a lot of these kind of suites, came from Bayanihan, that dance troupe that started in the Philippines, right? Mm-hmm. And they kind of they canonized the Philippine dance suites, from what I understand. But part of that canonization was actually going to kind of the mountain areas, the non-Christian groups in the Philippines, and then not forcing them, but and not necessarily coercing them, but kind of bribing them in a way. Them? No, not to change, but to hey, show me your dance.
No, yeah, they basically pulled a Bring It On.
Yeah.
Where they stole the cheers from the Clovers from Compton, and then
Bring It On
the high school. Yes, I'm bringing you Bring It On reference.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense, though.
But that's what it is. That's what Joe's trying to explain.
Yeah.
What Bernard said, they created an Orientalist view of indigenous cultures, right? And people. So fast forward to PCNs. Filipino Americans don't know that history, and don't know the controversy behind that history. So is it not necessarily should blanket it as cultural appropriation, but like, is it even good that these are doing that? Folks are doing it. Students are doing it without knowing. It's kind of a controversial.
Look, there's so many things as a student that I did without knowing.
Yeah,
like the history of, or like the roots of. But I think that's part of it. Yeah. I'm not saying that we should be blind to it, but I think that's exactly what I meant earlier about these shows need to evolve, and it needs to have a life that is learning from its previous mistakes.
Okay, example: if you are black, if you are a black African American in this country, and you do African dance, is that appropriation?
Right.
Because we are Filipino Americans, right? And then we're learning, we're trying, it's like you're trying to make a connection to a culture that you may not know.
Exactly.
And so, I don't know. I think it's hard.
The history of how it got done, right? Like getting, watching the shows and basically taking it and quote unquote mass producing or culturally appropriating it. A college student doing a tinikling dance or doing a Muslim like traditional dance or even music, they don't know that. They didn't know that it was done that way. The way the cultural night is a showcase. So they're trying to showcase something that they've learned. So
are they really learning it, or are they just kind of they're just going through? Hold on. Are they learning it, or are they just going through the motions?
So this conversation was a skit that Brian, my cousin, did in UCR, and it was the video I watched because Brian.
This episode is a PCN in itself.
It is. So Brian represented the new immigrant. Mm-hmm. And then there's another character who represented the Phil M, and it was like a girl. And then the girl was trying to teach them some type of bird dance, and she was like being really graceful with it. Mm-hmm. And Brian was like, that's not what it's supposed to look like. You're supposed to look like a bird. And then he was like doing like a chicken dance type situation. Like Brian was like doing like, I'm doing the chicken. And the girl was like, I'm waving. I'm a graceful bird, blah, blah, blah. And so it was that push pull of like, I know what I'm talking about because I'm from the Philippines. And then the American girl being like, we got to make it look pretty. And so the whole thing, at the end of the day, they learned to come together and they were all Filipino at the end.
Mm-hmm. Because it magically happens that way.
After 2 hours or 3 hours of dancing and singing.
But I think just in general, you have to be forgiving for like college students, but also like, it depends on kind of like, I guess, depending on like the school and like the dance troupe you would link up with to do the choreography or whatever, like there's kind of like an opportunity there maybe for some education. I guess it depends on like, Did KNL do like UC Irvine's? Who did UC Irvine's choreography?
UC Irvine does their own choreography.
Under the auspices of any of the dance troops, though? Or I know
So
some dance troops like do.
it's like
they work together with the
together.
college groups, right?
Yeah.
So,
But when I was there, the dances were like learned from whoever the coordinator was for the particular suite, and they usually were like a previous person. When I was in trads, somebody actually had, it was a straight up bring it on situation. They had tape. They had a VHS tape from dancers in the Philippines doing the dance. And then they adopted the choreography for us and taught it to us. And that was what we did for the show. But then there were people who did cultural dance in high school, and they were then coordinators for like Tinikling and rural, and taught their peers then. So it varied as to who. And there are some schools that they brought in cultural dancers like like Therese Golden Guy, like Harold Golden Guy, like their whole family. They came to different schools to teach them dance. I have no idea where they learned it. I think it was like Tita Charmaine or something. Like there was a Tita who coordinated all that stuff. But like, and I don't know where that Tita learned the dances. Like, to be honest, like someone must have learned it.
Yeah. Well, like to me, to answer your question of devil's advocate, how else are we going to showcase it? If I mean, maybe it doesn't deserve to be showcased, but how else do you show that this is something that you appreciate, or even how else do you show that this is you are acknowledging as a as a student, you're acknowledging that as lame as it might be, something from your culture, other than reading it from a book or giving a lecture at Zellerbach Auditorium and say, you know what, instead of
what's that?
Sorry, at Berkeley's.
Is that a Berkeley reference?
Yeah, sorry, but other than like presenting it as a PowerPoint slide, right, or presenting a video of authenticity, right? That's what I'm saying about sometimes the way we are doing this is to showcase it, because this is how we are trying to grab at our roots, whatever that might look like.
I mean, but grab our roots, that's also arbitrary.
Sure.
Right. Sure. So whose roots are like
right?
Is our roots from the Igorot region, right? The mountain region, right? I think a way also is to have people from those areas actually teach folks those dances.
Sure.
Right. So I remember when I was in Santa Barbara, we happened to have a member who kind of just came on my senior. He was a freshman, who was part of BBOC. Right. BBOC is kind of coalition or association of kind of folks from the mountain regions, like groups, communities from the mountain regions who are in the U.S. Right.
Dave Mason, former guest, is a part of BBOC. Kieran from San Diego, she's a part of BBOC too. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot what the acronym stands for. But it's like Bontok, Kalinga, all Ifugao, etc. Right. So all these different groups. I apologize if I don't know offhand. But when he came in as a freshman, he actually taught all the different students, this is actually how you should do it. Right. So that's like, that's one way to I guess teach certain dances. But I'm wondering, like, if you don't have that resource,
right,
should you just rely on kind of this institutional passing down of dance choreography, or should you actually kind of do the research?
You should do all of it. You should do all of it. But what I'm saying is the critiques should be part of it. At the end of it all, the next year should be better.
Mm-hmm.
Like as older people looking at a younger generation, if they're getting it wrong, or if they're getting it, if we have a way to express to them, hey, maybe this is a way you guys could look at it, because then let that be the lasting kind of impression that you can teach someone, instead of just going, that's wrong, like you did this wrong.
Make it a teaching moment.
And that's the whole point of it. How else is it going to evolve? Look, storytelling is the same thing. storytelling. There's a way to pass on storytelling before technology. There's a way to write things down. There's a way to leave out information. Whoever a storyteller is, but the crux of the storytelling is this, like, you're able to pass on stories. And you can create it. It's the same the way we talk about food. It's the same way we talk about recipes on how to make it authentic, not as authentic, culturally appropriated. But just hang on for a second and look at it for its actual value. And the critique should definitely be part of it, but make it a teaching moment. Like, yeah, I had to change this because I realized that this was not what I thought it was. That is college. That is every day in college. I realized I should not have drunk so much. I realized if someone had told me that this meant this, I would have done better. But that's all part of it. Even activism outside of PCN. There's a lot of folks who are active, doing a lot of activism in college, and then stopped.
Yeah.
And then just stopped. They decided that was my college life.
Yeah.
So let's figure out a teaching moment for those kinds of things. And I'm defending PCNs here, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like,
I wish totally. I mean, I'm just trying to push and prod.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I agree with all of what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I do think, at least, part of my critique is that I hope, or this in itself is a teaching moment. Hopefully people are learning about kind of the controversial roots of PCN, of the dances particularly, how PCN can progress and move forward.
Right.
I know some folks out. Sorry, we haven't been paying too much in the chat. But,
no, I have been. It's very interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I know some folks have cited some sources. So read Theo Gonzalez's book, The Day the Dancer Stayed. He's probably the foremost scholar on PCN. And Barbara Gerlach talks about Sinkil as an Orientalist practice. So
it is?
Yeah. Or
it's
how
not
it
just
evolved
it's not just beautiful fans
and scarves.
Scarves?
Right?
And
did I tell you I was a Sinkil prince?
Like this?
Oh my gosh.
I have two. I can do the dance. Watch.
Don't do the.
Oh my god!
Like this, right? Like that. Like that.
Oh my goodness!
Like that. Like that.
Can you do the Maria Clara dances with that?
No, because I'm too dark, and they wouldn't let me be in that sweet colorism.
Okay. So can we? We totally just scratched the surface on PCN, but can we actually go back and talk about or answer some of the questions that were raised?
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry, man. We scroll up. It kind of blew up.
Theo, I just want to point out, I think I might have been at your P-grad because I was an undergrad when you were a grad student.
Sorry, I don't know how far I'm going up here, but
something about
Theo talked about Bayanihan and popularized
J.A. Ronto Ramirez. Joe, do you know who that is?
That's Jojo.
Oh. Okay.
San Diego.
Oh.
Just get to the questions.
Okay, so one of the questions,
how do you measure a PCN success? That's a good question. I would measure it by how the timing of it, and if your butt is sore from sitting in that chair for that long. I mean, let's just be real. When I was at Irvine, I put little boosters on the chair that my parents would sit in, so they have a cushion for their butt.
It's the least number of people who walk away and leave early.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, right? Like, I think that was a really good question because it could be a successful show because a lot of people attended it, but no one learned a single thing from it, right? Or it could be a show that people walked away from because they didn't get the traditional dances that, right? So some folks may have walked away from a show thinking this is too political for me. So I would say that's really hard.
I mean, you got to imagine there's a level of code switching that a student does when you are in a PCN, because there is there is who you are as a college student, and you're in who you are with your peers, and there's who you are with your family. And so, like, at the end of the day, if you're doing the show, like, the only thing that matters to your parents might be what side of the stage are you on. Like,
Yeah.
where should we sit so that we can see you and take pictures of you?
One of the comments says, you measure the success of PCNs from the elders. If it reminds them of how they grew up, then you did it right.
Okay.
one
Any
way.
other questions?
Bev's asking if we talked about the inclusion of hip hop dance troops in PCN. So the moderns. Oh, Carlo De La Fuente said was the modern Cabo Modern group from the 8-hour PCN called the Mahaba Modern. I thought that was a good joke.
Oh,
Mahaba Modern.
Oh, got it.
Oh, this is another question from Carlo earlier. It says, do groups pass down scripts, lessons learned, ways to improve, etc. with college students? If it is not passed down, then how would they know what could and should evolve? That's a good question.
I know more of the kind of organized schools out there. They have like an archive, perhaps in their library.
Mm-hmm.
I know UCLA does. I think SF State does. I don't remember. Santa Barbara for sure doesn't. So a lot of institutional knowledge kind of dissipates after a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a problem, I think, in the Filipino American community. Like, you know, I've been in higher education, and a lot of alumni associations are strong in like the African American community and the Latinx community, but not so much in the Asian American community or Filipino American community.
Marla Campos says that they hold a PCN summit now. So perhaps that is how they pass it down.
Or maybe it should be a class. Take it for a year.
No, some schools have classes.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, some schools have classes, and they're taught, like, they get credit for being in PCN as well as kind of learning, kind of behind, like the research behind it.
I think that's great.
Yeah. Then I would have been in
I
PCN.
got credit.
No, but it's like a 1 unit class or something.
Mike's like, I could've majored.
credit.
Would have balanced out all the F's I got in chemistry.
I mean, to answer Bev's question about the inclusion of hip hop dance troops, like, I really don't know the answer to that. I just know from like personal experience that, like, I was told Cabo Modern was like the first one to do like a hip hop type situation, and hip hop dance group. I have no idea if that's like actually factually true.
Yeah,
I know that they popularized it. They popularized
I'm not sure
it.
It's the first one, but
I don't know if it's the first one, but they popularized it, and due to the fact that they like got to be backup dancers with LL Cool J, and then at Irvine they also were there at the beginnings of Vibe, which is a dance competition that is founded by a fraternity, an Asian fraternity, at UC Irvine, which has grown into one of those like crazy ass dance competitions that folks do. So I feel like it started with folks trying to, I mean, Arnel Clavario has talked about it when I did like a alumni panel, and it was more like
he was the founder of Cabo Modern.
He's the founder of Cabo Modern, and they wanted to express like a Filipino American experience. Like, there were kids who used to dance hip hop, and like they would, you know, pop lock and do breakdancing and all that type of stuff, and so they wanted to be able to do that in PCN. And so they brought it to PCN and they incorporated it in the show. And then I think it trickled down. Like, all the other schools were like, oh, hey, they have that. Let's do it too. And so then it became a thing.
I would argue that is a more authentic representation of Filipino American culture than like the dances.
They're the most popular ones. That's the one like thousands of people want to, like hundreds of people want to audition for.
Oh God, yeah.
And in Santa Barbara, it's like for any kind of Maria Clara dances, like it'll be a success if you get like 5 people to audition.
I did the
Wait, so are you saying I could have been in it too?
Dude, you could have done everything in Santa Barbara. At least when I was going there. I think the Filipino student population increased a little bit, but it's still like one of the lowest amongst the UCs.
I mean, I feel like, it became, I remember when I was working at SIPA, some of the kids there who had graduated from high school and went into like community colleges, and upon finding that the community college they went to didn't have a Filipino club, like it was their priority to start a Filipino club, partly because they also wanted to do a PCN, and also they wanted to make sure they included the modern part. So it's like it's almost as if there was like this template that was laid out that was just like, oh my God, going to college as a Filipino means doing a PCN apparently. So and this is like kids who like have no context for this other than like they saw videos from their cousins or older brothers and sisters. So it's just like, you know.
There's a question here that by Jacques Madadella. Is the intent of PCN to show the elders that they are paying respect to tradition, or is it to show that they took a semester learning Filipino-led courses? To To answer the latter part, no, because some students aren't taking Filipino-led courses. And to show elders that they're paying respect to tradition, maybe, I guess,
Maybe.
perhaps.
Or maybe there's a kind of maybe a miscommunication of what tradition is, right? So Filipino Americans have a certain notion, maybe a romanticized notion of what Filipino culture is, and then the parents have something totally different, and that could possibly be in play.
Does Kaba Modern still exist today with the evolution into Kinjas?
I don't know.
Think it does. I feel like Kinjas is another dance troupe of like alumni.
The most important question is are there any Filipinos in Kaba Modern now?
I mean, I think so. Perhaps. No, the real question is, are they still students at UC Irvine?
Oh, got it. Yeah. So I know we're kind of running out of time. We've been out of time. But I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us.
Oh, I want to acknowledge.
Go ahead.
I want to acknowledge the students who commented earlier.
Yes.
On our post about campus closures leading to cancellation of PCNs this academic year. Yeah. And so we put out like, what are you all doing to commemorate this? And somebody named Angelique from, which is Fine Incorporated National Secretary, UConn, I guess, said, decided to make a video compilation of memories from the school year, including rehearsals for our culture night. It's both heartbreaking but awfully nostalgic. This would have been my last one, but I'm so glad I did it every year of my collegiate career. I encourage others to make the absolute most out of their time with their Phil-Am orgs if they still have some. Go to events, make at least one friend participate in your PCN. Mine was a catalyst that led me to become friends with one of my closest pals. So UConn FOSSA. So that's East Coast, right? Connecticut.
Yeah.
And then something, but it's hard to accept that the possibilities of shows to even be rescheduled is so little, but definitely try to see what could be done in the future to have everyone still motivated and engaged in their organizations is important during this time of hardship and isolation. Georgia and the South of the U.S. kind of rushed the shutdowns of everything. So there was little more ripped to Band-Aid than I wish there was, but being a Filipino leader is calling each one of us trying to try our best, and I know the efforts will be honored in some way, even if we don't know exactly right now. And that is from Julia, who's at UGA, so that's in the South, University of Georgia. So I'm really glad we got those perspectives from folks. As somebody who works at an institution, my heart breaks for anybody who is a senior. Because like there are milestones that you are missing out on, and it's not fair. Like this whole situation, quarantine, it took away so much from everybody.
Yeah.
And so we are talking about PCNs to highlight like the work that you all done. So if this was your first or your last, know that like you had like you created memories with your peers, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Cry.
And you can always go back and watch next year. Or not.
No, I that's fucked up, dude.
Sorry.
or they should have like a senior suite, or like get like people who missed it to be part of the PCN somehow. Like have a little slice just for them, because
that'd be kind of nice if they're still around this year. Yeah, or available to come.
Yeah, or if we're still not in isolation.
Man, ain't nobody finding a job in the next year. What are you talking about?
That's true. But where there'll be PCN money for PCN. That's another thing.
Damn.
Yeah. But I want to say, I know, shout out to Cal Poly Pomona. I know you all did your PCN over Zoom.
I want to see that. I want to see.
They read the script. Shout out to them, but I couldn't watch it. Sorry.
Wait, who's fucked up now?
I'm sorry. I can't.
Here I am trying to encourage people to go watch PCNs from the year before. And then here you are saying, shout out, but I'm not going to watch it.
No. And I know UCLA, what they're going to do, they're going to have like a online event where they're going to watch last year's PCN. So
Okay.
that's something.
You know what I'm looking forward to next year when someone writes a PCN about Tiger King.
Oh no.
Oh god. Should be about TFAL. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Oh,
That's how you know we've made it. If someone makes a skit involving like
a
podcasters,
podcast?
Yeah. That would be
Oh
awesome.
my God. Yes. Yes.
that'll be my
yes.
marker for saying that we've made it somehow. We're in someone's PCN skit.
Do we get invited? If we get invited, do we go?
Are we gonna go?
No.
Let's watch the video.
No, you won't.
No, I'll stream it.
No,
I'll
you
stream it. But yeah,
go.
again. Ooh, what's that, Ryan?
It's a cookie.
Ryan is holding some cookies. Ooh.
What?
That's
Oh,
my
it's your face.
It's your face?
It's your face.
Oh, it was Ryan's birthday this past week. So
It was
Yeah, happy
Ryan's
birthday, Ryan.
Happy
Thank you,
birthday,
thank you,
Ryan.
thank you. I love you all.
25.
Ryan, you have to sing a song now. It's
Oh,
your.
But these are
Your
from a good friend, Nikki, who has a cookie company.
Ooh, she has a cookie company?
Yeah.
What's it
she just
called?
nailed it.
Oh.
So-en something.
So, and like the panties?
Like the panties?
Yeah, but she.
Joe, we said the same thing.
Oh no,
High
no,
five,
it
high
totally
five.
is that. But Nikki is not Filipino, so she doesn't know this. But she sent me cookies.
Wait, she doesn't know that so and is panties?
I don't think so.
Are you gonna tell her?
No, because it's like her kids' names. So it's
Dude,
Sophie
bro.
and Enzo, I believe.
People are going to be sending those cookies thinking they're sending underwear.
It's called So-en Cookiegram.
So and cookie.
Oh my
People are
god.
going to
Sorry.
be thinking it's underwear cookies.
Take a bite of my so-in.
Nikki,
Wow,
if
that's
you're watching. Anyway.
Oh, PCN about PCN being canceled due to pandemic.
Oh,
yes,
that's
that
gonna
has
be
to
the-
be one.
Everyone's gonna do that
Obviously.
next year. Everyone's gonna
Totally,
do that next year.
Nikki. That's a great story.
Yeah. So yeah, we have to wrap up, but just want to give shout out to all the students who didn't get to do PCN this year. I want to give shout out to all people who are joining us on Facebook. Especially shout out to Theo Gonzalez, who is kind of the foremost scholar on PCN. But yeah, we just wanted to kind of talk about what PCN meant to us and kind of just start a conversation. Not really start. There's been conversations already, but like continue the conversation about PCNs.
Yeah.
And I bet this won't be the last because
Of course
this is
not.
just like us talking about it.
Yeah.
I would like to have people on to discuss this. Theo, maybe.
Or like, so a person who's a student now in the
or a
process
person
of
who's a
doing
student
PCN.
now, or Harold Goling guy, because
We had his sister already.
we already had his sister, but like we could have him on.
Only one golden guy a season.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We will see you next time. Yeah, we have to talk about what's next after this call. All
Who knows?
right.
All right. Thank you,
Good night,
everybody.
Thank you. Bye. This Filipino American Life is produced by Michael Nailat. Our intro and outro music is by Roger Habon, aka 10.4 Raj. Resident reality checker Girly Colado, legal advisor Rianne Fajardo, and graphic design by Vincent Collyer.